So I've been seeing these videos pop up in my feed, and one look into Discord shows me a very similar message. Heading over to my comments, I see the exact same thing. People interested in this. Yet, I remain very skeptical. We've seen this very perpetual cycle before. First with Jurassic Survival, Grimsoul, and then more recently, Frostborn, and now what this video is officially about, Cyberika. I still can't pronounce that. A game is created very similar to LDOE, but with a different mechanic or two. It picks up a few dedicated players and fan pages, but it eventually levels off. So this video is for me, or the people who have heard this cycle again and again and are very skeptical to even touch this. This is the case for Cyberika. But first, if you haven't already, consider subscribing and join my Discord, follow my Twitter. You know the drill, let's get to it. So after talking with a few people who have played this game for actually quite a while, they've racked up a number of hours on this game, which is a lot more than I could say for a large majority of people. There were a few constants that came up when I talked with each one of them about why this game should be played. So I think the most obvious one is story. Think of it as an exponentially difficult story. If you really push it, you can complete a majority of this story in a day, roughly. However, the story is meant to stretch out to pan a large majority of the game. It's what's been lacking in all of the other games, LDOE, Frostborn, Jurassic Survival, and from what I've heard, it's very different than Grimsoul even to an extent. So if you think about it like that, the story elements and how you got there is really meant to be explored throughout the entirety of the game, and I feel like that is a good appeal to a good majority of people. It is a set path, it's not like one of those choose your own adventure type things, but ultimately the story is meant to at least give you a little bit of information about the game, which is more than I can say for a large majority of these games. Now, another large factor is the gun system. The gun system is very different than any game of this genre. Instead of hoarding / stockpiling guns, you're looking for the best gear. Once you get that best gear, you repair it. Guns aren't as common. It's not like Last Day on Earth where there's a gun around every chest, or there's a weapon in every single crate you can instantly just grab, use, and then once you're done with it and it's at its durability, that's it. That's not necessarily the case. In this game, you're looking for the best gear, and you repair that best gear to become the best. To describe what they said exactly, the RPG mechanism makes you search for the better grades of guns instead of hoarding equal guns. Kind of like LDOE with all of these racks full of weapons, not like that. Repair stations make the game not search for weapons and armor, but rather search for resources which make you capable of using all resources, which then leads to weapons. So take that as what you will. A good point with all of these games, LDOE, Frostborn, Grimsoul Survival, and even Cyberika now to an extent, is multiplayer. These games have always had a rough relationship with multiplayer, so how is it with this game? PvP is not added yet, nor is multiplayer, so there's no friend system. It's a little bit lower than LDOE, but again, we take into account that it is a beta. The game is preparing to have it. There are zones where it says you can PvP, but to be fair, it's not going to be that big of a deal. Early preliminary PvP is always never like the game's final form. They're always going to add something, and it's going to completely change everything in how you PvP and how players PvP, which will change everything when the game officially goes out. Technically, the game is global, but... And then the other last case for this game are the little fine changes that they threw in there just to make the game a little bit more different than all of the other copies. When you go to zones, you drive a little bit, and there is a nice 60 FPS button and streamer mode button. I wish they had creator codes in one of these games. Come on, Kafir. But ultimately, when you look at it, it is really just LDOE in the future, kind of. Yes, there are a couple of different mechanics and storylines and different ways you interact with weapons and technology and characters, but ultimately it is still the same game at heart. So the final question I posed to these players who play this game on a regular basis is, what do you see the future of this game being? Do you see it as something that can top Last Day on Earth or Frostborn? Or do you see it as something that will become the next Jurassic Survival? And I think the answer, or rather lack of answer, is really telling. The game is really new, so it's really difficult to tell which direction it will go. He described Jurassic Survival having potential, but they really went the route of Last Day on Earth clone, so people really got angry and just stopped. And what they mean by that is seasons. And again, I will spare you the long rants about seasons, but seasons don't fit in a survival game. I suppose in this game it would make a little bit more sense since there is an essential ruling group. Your character is being controlled. Your character is not the top elite player. Your character is working below. So I could see how seasons could be applied to this game, but ultimately I think seasons, and I have to agree with the answer there, seasons will do more harm than good to this game. So if they ever went the route of seasons, I could totally see the game dying. Likewise, I apply that same sentiment to Frostborn or to Grimsoul. Both of those games, it doesn't really work with seasons. Seasons don't fit in a survival game, because how does that connect? The game is about survival, not a daily season offering. So ultimately, the case for Cyberika is this. The main message that they want to convey across is just to try it. I know, according to these polls especially, a lot of people aren't too happy to even touch this game with a 10-foot pole because they're very skeptical about it becoming the next Jurassic Survival, or it could even become the next Frostborn, but definitely not the same level of LDUE. While some people definitely do disagree and think that it'll overtake LDUE or something like that, I'm still skeptical. I'll probably try it out every so often if there's a major update or something like that happens, but I don't foresee that overcoming LDUE, although I do think that LDUE slowly diluting itself, but that's a topic for another video. Anywho, subscribe, ZD out.